She still says goodnight to a man who isn't there. Every night, she wipes her tears, steps outside, and looks up at the same star. And the strangest part? It shines brighter when she does. This isn't just a story about loss. It's about what happens after the goodbye, when the house goes silent, when the bed feels too wide, when longing becomes louder than memory. It's about a woman who thought she had buried her forever, only to realize forever doesn't fit inside a grave. Because sometimes love doesn't vanish, it relocates. Sometimes the invisible becomes the most real thing in the room. Tonight, you're going to feel the weight of a last goodnight kiss, the ache of an empty side of the bed, and the quiet language of fireflies in the dark. You'll witness grief at its rawest, and then something unexpected. A shift. A glow. A connection that refuses to break. So if you've ever looked at the sky and wondered if someone was still listening, stay with me. And if stories like this move something deep inside you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because here, music doesn't just tell a story, it reveals what we're too afraid to say out loud. I remember the night the silence became louder than any scream, and I swear I could still feel your presence in the room even after the machines stopped making that steady heartbeat sound. They told me it was over, that I had to say goodbye, but how do you say goodbye to the man who was your home? I walked back into our house and everything felt invisible and heavy at the same time, like the walls were holding their breath. I sat on the edge of our bed, still wearing the same clothes from the hospital, staring at nothing but seeing everything. The memory of your last smile kept looping in my head, soft and tired, like you already knew. I wanted to scream, but all that came out were quiet tears sliding down my face. And in that silence, I almost heard you whisper, "Wipe your face. Come outside." I didn't want to move, didn't want to accept that the sky outside was still there, that the world hadn't paused for my healing to begin. But something inside me, maybe love, maybe denial, made me stand up anyway. I walked to the door slowly, like if I delayed long enough, you'd be sitting on the couch waiting for your goodnight kiss. I even caught myself thinking, don't be dramatic, he's probably in the backyard, and for a second that lie felt comforting. Grief does that, you know, it builds tiny bridges between memory and reality just so you don't fall apart. When I opened the door, the night air hit my face, cool and gentle, like a reminder that I was still alive. The sky was darker than usual, but somehow it didn't feel empty. I looked up without knowing why, and that's when I felt it, not absence, but something else. You used to tell me that the sky was never just darkness, that even when we couldn't see it clearly, there was always light fighting to glow through. I never paid much attention to that back then. It just sounded poetic and sweet. But that night, standing outside with tears still wet on my cheeks, I understood what you meant. I felt this strange warmth in my chest, like a whisper of comfort brushing against my ribs. I wasn't healed, not even close, but I wasn't completely alone either. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. And I realized something powerful. Sometimes love doesn't leave, it just changes its address. That thought scared me and comforted me at the same time. The house behind me felt hollow, like a body without a soul, and yet the sky above felt full, almost too full. I kept staring, waiting for a sign, even though I didn't know what kind of sign I expected. That's the thing about longing, it makes you search for meaning in everything. A breeze becomes a message, a flicker becomes a promise, a shadow becomes a memory. I stood there longer than I meant to, replaying our last conversation, wondering if I had missed something important. You had squeezed my hand and said, "You'll be okay," and I had laughed it off like you were being dramatic. Now those words echoed differently, like a preparation I didn't know I was receiving. I remember wiping my face the way you used to when I cried over something small, like burning dinner or arguing about nothing. You'd cup my chin, look at me and say, "Hey, come outside, let's breathe for a minute." That routine felt so ordinary before, almost boring in its simplicity. Now it felt sacred, like a ritual I didn't know I was going to need. So there I was, alone in the dark, trying to breathe the way you taught me. Inhale slow, exhale slower, like you always said. I kept thinking, if I can just survive this night, maybe tomorrow won't hurt as much. But deep down, I knew tomorrow would hurt differently. The pain wasn't sharp anymore, it was heavy, like carrying an invisible weight tied around my chest. I missed your voice, your laugh, the way you'd wait up for me just to steal that goodnight kiss before we fell asleep. I could almost see you leaning against the doorframe, pretending you weren't tired just so you could say, sleep well. That memory hit harder than the hospital room, harder than the goodbye. Because grief isn't just about losing someone once, it's about losing them every night after. Every routine becomes a reminder. Every silence becomes an echo. And as I stood there, staring at that wide, endless sky, something inside me shifted just enough to keep me from collapsing. I didn't understand it yet, didn't have words for it, but I felt it growing, this fragile thread between here and somewhere beyond. I wasn't ready to believe in signs or stars or heaven just yet. But I was ready to admit that love like ours doesn't just disappear into silence. And that was the first crack in the wall of my despair. The first moment that made me look up instead of down. You know what hurts the most? It's not the hospital room, not even the word goodbye. It's the memory of you staying up late just to give me that soft goodnight kiss, like it was a promise we renewed every single night. You'd pretend you weren't tired, scrolling through your phone or flipping channels, but I always knew you were waiting for me. And I'd walk into the bedroom, sometimes annoyed, sometimes distracted, and there you were, smiling like I was the best part of your day. That simple kiss became our invisible anchor, something so ordinary it felt permanent. I never imagined that routine would turn into my most painful memory. Funny how the smallest gestures become the loudest echoes after someone is gone. That's the cruel poetry of longing. I keep replaying the last night over and over in my head, searching for details like they might change the ending. You leaned in, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Good night, love," like you always did. Nothing dramatic, no final speech, no grand farewell, just warmth and familiarity. If I had known it was the last one, I would have held your face a little longer. I would have memorized the exact shape of your smile, the way your breath felt against my cheek. Instead, I just said, "See you in the morning," like tomorrow was guaranteed. We live like time is on our side, don't we? Like forever is something we can postpone. After you were gone, I started sleeping on your side of the bed sometimes, just to feel closer to the memory of you. It sounds silly, I know, but grief makes you do things you never thought you would. I'd close my eyes and imagine you were still there, waiting to steal one more goodnight kiss. There were nights I even whispered into the silence, "I'm here," hoping somehow your presence could hear me. The house felt different without your quiet footsteps, without the light turning off after I fell asleep. That routine used to be background noise, now it's sacred silence. Healing, they say, begins with acceptance, but no one tells you how loud the acceptance phase can be. Sometimes I catch myself reaching across the bed in the middle of the night, half asleep, searching for your warmth. And when my hand finds nothing but cold sheets, that's when the longing hits hardest. It's like my body hasn't gotten the memo that you're gone. My heart still expects your heartbeat next to mine, steady and reassuring. I've learned that grief isn't just emotional. It's physical, it lives in the muscles, in the breath, in the way your chest tightens unexpectedly. You don't just miss someone mentally, you miss them with your whole body. And that's exhausting. There are evenings when I sit outside again, looking up at the sky, remembering how you used to say the night was our time. The world slows down after sunset, you joke, that's when real conversations happen. We'd talk about everything and nothing, bills, dreams, silly plans about traveling somewhere warm. And then, without fail, you'd end it the same way, one soft kiss, one quiet promise. I didn't realize those moments were building something eternal inside me. I thought they were just days passing by. Now I understand they were foundations. If you're listening somehow, I want you to know that I still wait for that kiss sometimes. Not because I'm stuck, but because it reminds me that what we had was real. It wasn't perfect, we argued about stupid things, we got tired, we messed up. But every night we chose each other again, even in small ways. That's the kind of love that doesn't disappear, it transforms. And I'm starting to believe that maybe, from wherever you are, you're still leaning in, even if I can't feel it yet. And that's what confuses me the most. This strange sensation that the goodbye wasn't complete. Like there's something unfinished between here and wherever you are now. Because sometimes, when the house gets quiet enough, I almost sense a whisper brushing against my thoughts. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle, like a breath in the dark. And that feeling makes me wonder if love really stops at death, or if it simply learns how to speak differently. No one prepares you for the rhythm of grief, how it comes in waves that don't ask for permission. Some mornings I wake up almost steady, thinking maybe I'm finally healing, and then by afternoon the longing tightens around my chest like it owns the place. People say, "You're strong," but strength feels overrated when your home no longer feels like home. I still make coffee for two sometimes, out of habit, and then I just stand there staring at the second cup. It's strange how memory hides in the smallest routines, waiting to ambush you. Even the silence has weight now, like it's carrying your invisible presence through every room. And some days, I don't know whether to fight it or let it wash over me. There were days it got worse, just like they warned me. The kind of days where I couldn't breathe without feeling that sharp goodbye slicing through my thoughts. I'd be fine 1 minute, and then a random song, a smell, or even the way the light hit the window would break me open. Grief doesn't knock, it barges in, rearranges the furniture of your heart, and leaves you trying to figure out what's still standing. I used to think healing meant moving on, but now I see it's more like learning how to carry the memory without collapsing. It's not about forgetting, it's about surviving the remembering. And surviving takes practice. At night, the longing gets louder. That's when I miss your heartbeat the most, when the darkness feels too wide and too honest. I lie there replaying conversations, searching for hidden messages I might have missed. Did you know? Did you feel it coming? Were you already preparing me without saying it out loud? These questions don't have answers, but they sit with me anyway. Grief is like talking to someone who can't respond. You keep speaking because the silence feels worse. Some friends told me to stay busy, to distract myself, to focus on the future. And I tried. I cleaned closets, reorganized drawers, even moved furniture around like I could rearrange the pain too. But the truth is, you can't outwork longing. It waits patiently, like a shadow that follows wherever you go. What helped more was sitting outside at night, looking up at the sky the way we used to. I started talking to you there, softly, like you were just in the next room. It felt silly at first, but sometimes healing begins with small acts of faith. There's something about admitting you're not okay that changes everything. I stopped pretending I was fine and allowed myself to cry without apologizing for it. I'd whisper, "I miss you," like it was a prayer instead of a complaint. And somehow, saying it out loud made the pain feel less suffocating. Not gone, just manageable. It's funny how the heart adjusts. It stretches around the loss, makes room for both sorrow and love at the same time. I didn't think that was possible before. What I'm learning is that grief isn't the opposite of love, it's proof that love was real. The deeper the connection, the louder the longing. And that realization shifts something inside me. Instead of fighting the pain, I've started honoring it, because every tear carries your memory within it. It's like each tear is a tiny reflection of the life we built together. And if that's the price of loving deeply, then maybe it's a price I can learn to carry. Still, there are moments when the ache feels heavier than hope. Moments when I stand outside under that endless sky and wonder if you can see me too. If from wherever you are, you notice how hard I'm trying to stay steady. And lately, when the night grows quiet enough, I've started noticing something new, tiny flickers of light in the dark that weren't there before. Or maybe they were, and I just never really saw them. The first night I noticed the fireflies, I almost missed them. They were tiny, barely visible against the dark, blinking like shy little signals in the backyard. Normally, I would have ignored them, maybe smiled and gone back inside. But grief changes your eyesight. It makes you look closer at things you once rushed past. I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, watching those small lights glow and disappear. It felt random at first, like nature doing what nature does. But then one blink lingered just a second longer, and my heart reacted before my logic could interrupt. And I found myself whispering, "Is that you?" I know how that sounds. Part of me rolled my eyes at myself, thinking I was losing it. But another part, the part that still feels your presence, leaned into that fragile possibility. You always loved simple things, remember? You'd say, "Big miracles are overrated, it's the small lights that matter." And standing there, watching those fireflies glow in the silence, I understood what you meant. Their light wasn't loud, wasn't permanent, it flickered, then vanished, then returned. Just like hope. Just like healing. That night, I stayed outside longer than usual. The air felt warmer, almost comforting, and the silence didn't feel empty anymore. I started talking softly, telling you about my day like I used to when we'd sit on the porch. I told you how I nearly burned dinner again because I got distracted by a memory. I told you how I still reach for my phone to text you something funny. And as those tiny lights blinked around me, I felt less alone. Not healed, but accompanied. Fireflies don't chase away the dark, they coexist with it. That realization hit me hard. Maybe grief isn't about eliminating the darkness but learning to see the light within it. Those flickers reminded me that love doesn't need to be overwhelming to be powerful. It can be subtle, almost invisible, and still change everything. The more I watched them, the more I felt this quiet comfort settling in my chest. Like your whisper was woven into every glow. There were nights when I felt silly for waiting for them. I'd step outside hoping to see that soft blink, like it had become our new ritual. And sometimes they weren't there, and the longing would hit again, sharp and familiar. But then I realized something important. The comfort wasn't in the fireflies themselves. It was in what they represented, a reminder to look for light instead of drowning in silence. That shift changed the way I carried my pain. You used to tell me that when something beautiful appears in the dark, you don't question it, you receive it. So I stopped analyzing and just allowed myself to feel. I let the glow become a symbol of your love, still active, still present in some invisible way. And I noticed something strange. The nights I felt calmer, the fireflies seemed brighter. Maybe it was coincidence. Or maybe love responds when we soften. And then, one evening, as I lifted my eyes from the flickering lights near the grass to the vast sky above, I saw something that made my breath catch. A single star shining stronger than the rest, steady and unwavering. And suddenly, the fireflies felt like an introduction, like they had been guiding me to look higher. That star wasn't just bright, it was steady. While the others seemed to flicker with distance, this one held its glow like it had something to prove. I don't know how to explain it without sounding dramatic, but the moment I saw it, I knew. Not with logic, not with science, but with that quiet part of the heart that recognizes home. You used to point at random stars just to make me laugh, saying, "That one's ours." I'd roll my eyes, teasing you for being cheesy. But that night, standing there alone, I wasn't laughing anymore. I was looking up like I was searching for your address. I whispered your name under my breath, barely audible even to myself. The sky felt enormous, but that single light made it feel personal. I remembered how you once said heaven, if it exists, must be filled with ordinary people who loved extraordinarily. That thought stayed with me as I stared at that star. What if that's your home now? What if that's your new little house in the sky? The idea didn't erase the longing, but it softened it. Like wrapping grief in something gentle. I started going outside every night after that. Not obsessively, not desperately, just intentionally. It became a quiet ritual between me and the sky. I'd wipe my tears, step onto the porch, and look up. Some nights I'd talk. Other nights I'd just breathe. And every time I found that same steady glow, something inside me would settle. It was like saying goodnight all over again, just in a different direction. There's something powerful about giving your pain a place to look toward. Before, my grief felt scattered, like it had nowhere to land. Now, it had a focal point, a small, glowing reminder that love doesn't disappear, it relocates. When the longing tightens, I lift my eyes instead of lowering my head. It doesn't solve everything, but it shifts my posture. And sometimes, that's enough to keep going. I've caught myself smiling at that star, which felt impossible at first. Smiling used to feel like betrayal, like if I felt okay for even a second, I was forgetting you. But I'm starting to understand that healing doesn't mean letting go of the memory. It means carrying it differently. That star doesn't replace you. It represents the promise that what we built still exists somewhere. Maybe not in the way I imagined, but still shining. There are evenings when the sky is cloudy, when I can't see it at all. Those nights test me. The doubt creeps in, whispering that maybe I made it all up. But then I remember something you once told me during a storm. Just because you can't see the stars doesn't mean they're not there. And that sentence carries me through. Presence doesn't depend on visibility. Love doesn't depend on touch. And lately, when I stand there long enough, staring at that steady glow, I feel something else rising inside me, not just comfort, but connection. A strange certainty that from wherever you are, you're still leaning close. Like maybe when I look up, you're looking down. And if that's true, then maybe the distance between us isn't as wide as it feels. Sometimes, when the night is still enough, I close my eyes and imagine you where that star is, not distant, not unreachable, just on the other side of something invisible. I picture you watching over me the way you used to wait up for that goodnight kiss, patient and steady. It comforts me to think that from where you are, loving me isn't any harder than it was here. Maybe the only difference is that now I can't feel your hands, but the warmth is still there. I talk to you like you're just in another room, like the distance is temporary. And in those quiet conversations, the longing softens into something gentler. Almost like love has learned a new language. I used to believe that love depended on touch, on shared meals, shared beds, shared laughter. Now I'm learning that love might be more durable than that. It doesn't collapse when the body disappears. It shifts form. I still say goodnight out loud, still whisper your name into the silence. It might sound foolish to some, but grief teaches you to care less about appearances and more about connection. When I speak, I imagine you listening. And when I look up at that steady light, I imagine you answering in the only way you can, by glowing a little brighter. There are moments when I swear I feel your presence in the room. Not in a dramatic ghost story way, just subtle, like a change in the air. A sudden calm when my thoughts are spiraling. A warmth that settles in my chest for no obvious reason. I don't try to overanalyze it anymore. I just receive it. Because whether it's memory or something eternal, it carries comfort. And comfort is sacred when you're learning how to live without someone. I've started to understand that maybe from your side, the goodbye didn't feel final either. Maybe you're still leaning close, still loving me in ways I can't physically detect. That thought doesn't trap me in the past. It helps me move forward. It reminds me that I'm not abandoned, just temporarily separated. And that changes everything. Separation hurts, yes, but it's not the same as absence. When the longing hits hard, I no longer fight it the way I used to. I let it rise, I let it pass through me. I step outside, wipe my face like you always told me, and look up. I imagine you saying, "I'm still here." Not in words, but in presence. That shift, from "you're gone" to "you're somewhere else," has been part of my healing. It doesn't erase the ache, but it gives it direction. I've realized that love from the other side isn't loud. It doesn't interrupt or demand. It's steady, like that star, constant, patient. And maybe that's what eternity feels like, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just quietly enduring. I hold on to that idea on the hardest nights. Because if love can survive death, then maybe nothing we built together was wasted. Maybe it simply continues in a different dimension of light. And the more I lean into that possibility, the more something shifts inside me. The pain doesn't vanish, but it transforms. It becomes less about what I lost and more about what still exists, unseen, but real. And lately, when the longing tightens again, I feel this urge not just to look up, but to speak, to ask, to listen more closely. As if the connection between here and there is waiting for something more. There are days when the longing doesn't knock gently, it crashes in like a storm I didn't see coming. I can be fine in the morning, folding laundry, answering messages, pretending I'm adjusting. And then something small, your favorite song playing somewhere, or the smell of rain, pulls me straight back into that first goodbye. My chest tightens, my breath shortens, and suddenly I'm not strong anymore. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. It moves like weather. And when it hits, it doesn't ask if I'm ready. It just takes over. In those moments, I used to fight it. I tell myself to be rational, to focus on healing, to stop being dramatic. But I've learned something important. Resisting longing only makes it louder. So now, when it rises, I let it. I step outside like you used to tell me, wipe my face, and breathe. I don't rush the tears anymore. I let them fall like they're part of the ritual. Sometimes I talk to you out loud when it gets heavy. Not long speeches, just honest sentences. I miss you. This is hard. I wish you were here. Saying it feels like releasing pressure from my chest. It doesn't bring you back physically, but it keeps the connection alive. And strangely, that connection steadies me more than silence ever did. Like my voice builds a bridge across something invisible. I've noticed that longing has layers. There's the surface ache, the missing your voice, your laugh, your presence at dinner. And then there's the deeper ache, the missing the future we imagined, the plans that now float unfinished. That's the part that hurts quietly. The part that whispers at night. But even that whisper doesn't feel as hopeless as it once did. Because now, when the longing peaks, I lift my eyes instead of lowering them. I look at that steady star and let it hold my gaze. It doesn't answer my questions, but it reminds me of something stronger than pain. It reminds me that love didn't end, it shifted. And every time I choose to look up, I choose connection over despair. I won't pretend it's easy. There are nights when the sky is cloudy and the darkness feels too thick. On those nights, I close my eyes and picture the glow anyway. I imagine your presence steady, patient, waiting for me to breathe through the wave. And slowly, the storm inside me calms. Not instantly, but enough to survive it. And lately, when the longing fades just a little faster than before, I've started noticing something new. Not just pain, not just memory, but gratitude. Gratitude for having loved so deeply. Gratitude that the connection still feels alive. And that gratitude is changing the way I look at the sky, almost like I'm ready to see it differently. The more I look at that star, the more I realize it hasn't changed. I have. In the beginning, I searched for it out of desperation, like I needed proof that you were still somewhere. Now, I look at it with something quieter, something closer to gratitude. The longing is still there, but it doesn't crush me the way it used to. It feels like a thread instead of a chain. A connection instead of a wound. And somehow, that shift makes the light seem brighter. There are nights when I swear it glows stronger the longer I stare at it. Maybe it's just my imagination adjusting to the dark. Or maybe love responds when it's remembered. You always said attention is a form of affection, and I never forgot that. So when I lift my eyes and hold that light in my focus, it feels like I'm still choosing you. Still saying good night. Still keeping the promise we built quietly over the years. I've stopped asking why this happened. I don't have the answers, and chasing them only drained me. What I do know is that our story didn't vanish with your last breath. It transformed. The house still holds our memory, the air still carries your laughter, and the sky now holds your home. That realization doesn't erase the goodbye, but it softens it. It turns tragedy into something eternal. Sometimes I sit outside longer than I mean to, wrapped in a blanket, whispering about my day. I tell you the small things, the groceries I bought, the neighbor who waved, the coffee I almost burned again. And I smile at how ordinary it all sounds. Love was never about grand gestures for us. It was about consistency. And that consistency didn't die. There's a strange peace in knowing that distance doesn't cancel connection. I can't feel your heartbeat next to mine anymore, but I feel something steady inside my chest when I look up. Maybe that's the echo of what we built. Maybe that's what eternity feels like. Not dramatic, not loud, just enduring. And that endurance gives me strength I didn't know I had. The fireflies still appear some nights, flickering gently in the dark. And now I see them differently. They're not signs I desperately cling to anymore. They're reminders. Reminders that light exists even when the world feels dim. Reminders that love can glow quietly without demanding attention. And as I stand there beneath that wide, endless sky, I don't just feel longing anymore. I feel connection. I feel home in a way that doesn't depend on walls or doors. I feel like when the time comes, and my journey here is complete, I'll look up one last time, and I'll already know exactly where to go. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at the sky and felt like someone was still there? Have you ever experienced longing so strong it felt almost physical, like a heartbeat echoing in silence? Tell me in the comments, if you had one last goodnight kiss, what would you say differently? And if you could choose a song to turn into a story like this, which one would it be? Is there a melody that still carries someone's memory for you? Sometimes sharing keeps the light alive. Sometimes writing a name is a form of healing. So comment below. I'm reading every single one. And if you want more stories where music becomes emotion, where lyrics turn into life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here, goodbye is never just goodbye.